Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome today to our side event on opportunities for Africa in carbon capture and storage. My name's Tim Dixon from IEAGHG. I'm very pleased to be here with my partners for this side event, the Bureau of Economic Geology at the University of Texas, CO2 GeoNet, and CCSA. The theme of the side event is, as you see in the title, the opportunities for Africa with CCS. This is, and we'll cover the progress towards CCS deployment in Africa, and we'll also cover some global CCS developments that are relevant for Africa as well. Just as an introduction, my own organization, the IEA Greenhouse Gas R&D program, is part of the International Energy Agency family of technology cooperation programs. We've been established in 1991. We have 32 member countries and sponsors, and we're very pleased to be one of the members of the CTCN, the network part of the CTCN. And we've worked with them on various things such as webinars and bio-CCS, and an offshore workshop that my colleague will talk to shortly. What I'll do is I'll just sort of do some context setting, and also for anyone here who's here to learn about CCS, this is just a schematic to show what we're talking about. It's a capture of carbon dioxide and the storage of that carbon dioxide in deep geological formations, deep beneath the ground, deeper than 800 meters. We capture from large point sources. You can see a power station there, but it's also appropriate to any large point source of CO2. And that's quite a good diagram. It shows you the complexity of the geology of the subsurface and the need for good characterization and understanding, but also the scale of the depths that we are, where we're putting the carbon dioxide. That's the basic technology, and you can ship it in pipelines and ships and trucks to the storage site, or it can be on the site of the source as well. So why are we here talking about carbon capture and storage? Well, it's an important low carbon energy technology. My colleagues at the International Energy Agency produced the Energy Technology Perspectives, and the 2016 version shows us for all the energy sectors the different roles of different low carbon technology solutions to decarbonize those sectors to pursue the 2 degrees C goal. And they look up to 2050 to do that. And CCS plays a role in there with their least cost energy modeling of about 12% at 2050. The diagram on the bottom of the screen there is actually more important, but it's a little bit hard to pull this out. But the dark blue is the carbon capture and storage. The bottom band is the power sector, but the band above that is industry. And that one band covers many things that are very important, because there are industrial processes where there is no low carbon alternative. The production of cement, iron and steel, also refineries, fertilizer production. Those industry sectors can only decarbonize with carbon capture and storage. And the other thing that's sort of hidden in that is that this deployment of CCS out to 2050 is distributed all around the world in developing and developed countries. And just to look at the power sector alone, the IEA's similar analysis going into more detail shows that we need all of the low carbon electricity technologies to achieve the 2 degrees C, and that's at 2050. But of course, we're really more concerned going even further than that to 2100, and that's where the IPCC looks to. And you're probably all very familiar with the IPCC 5th assessment report published in 2014. Extremely important because it guides all of the policy decisions that we make, that are made here. Within their good work, they did an interesting analysis on the role of different low carbon energy technologies, like a sensitivity analysis. And they took out different low carbon energy technologies and saw that how that affected their energy scenario and emission scenario modeling. And you'll see that, we do need all of the technologies. You take any of them out and the costs increase. This is to get to 450 parts per million CO2. Bioenergy, the costs go up by 64% if you take that out. Take out solar, take out wind, they go up 6%. Nuclear, 7%. But CCS, they go up on average of 138%. But more significant than that is the number in the cylinder. Out of the 11 model runs, that's the number that could actually succeed in achieving 450 parts per million. So only 4 out of the 11 could achieve it. The others just could not achieve 450 parts per million. So that's really says how important CCS, and it's for those industry sectors that I mentioned. So that's why we're here looking at it, and that's why we work on it as an R&D organization, and my colleagues here work on it as well. Within the UNFCCC, CCS has got a good history, a history that's sort of been driven by the evidence base. There was an IPCC special report in 2005 that really, for the first time, using peer-reviewed material as the IPCC does, was able to say with some confidence that this is a technology that can work at scale to make a difference in terms of climate change. Interestingly, within that, it's very important that you have the right site selection and characterization, because the geology is different on all storage sites. And so then we spent 5 years working on how or whether to have CCS in the clean development mechanism. And again, in 2011, the UNFCCC enabled a technical workshop. And in those 6 years, since the IPCC special report, we had a lot more progress with real project experiences and research and understanding. And that meant that we could go into COP17 in Durban with more confidence for all those involved around the technical issues, and just go in to resolve the policy issues, which is what happened. And the output of that is that CCS is in the CDM with a specific set of rules, the modalities and procedures for CCS. So that's very significant at getting CCS as a technology within the UNFCCC. Since then, there have been events at the COPs focusing more on the project experiences, because we do have CCS projects. We learn from those projects. We had the technical expert meeting in 2014, project focused, and then the last 2 COPs, we've had side events focused on project experiences as well. So we're sharing the learning by doing, which is, I think, very important. And what will be interesting is, as we move forwards now, we have the Paris Agreement in force for 4 days. We have the IPCC working on a special report on the 1.5 degree scenario. And so looking at the work that comes out of that and the role of CCS will be very interesting. And then just as we got to COP21 last year, the UNFCCC produced this nice report, Climate Action Now. Important because IPCC is looking to 2100. My colleagues in IEA looked to 2050. This was looking to 2020, things we can do between now and 2020. And in their 6 priority thematic areas, CCS and CCUS is one of those 6 areas they highlighted for action now. And within that report, they also highlighted Boundary Dam, the first large-scale CCS on a coal power station. And they also highlighted the importance of international collaborations. And that's what we do and my colleagues do. And it was very nice to get a mention in there for my organization, but also for the Global CCS Institute, and also for the Carbon Sequestration Leadership Forum as role models of international collaboration on technologies. And since then, going into the Paris, into COP21, we saw the INDCs being submitted. 10 of those had CCS explicitly in as a mitigation activity. More had it in as an activity to monitor. More had it implicitly within their policies, such as the US and Europe, but 10 had it explicitly. And those 10 covered significant proportion of the emissions. And we look forward to seeing those developments and updates of the INDCs every 5 years and see the increase use of CCS within those. So I'm very pleased today to have here to share with you some very informative experts from Africa and around the world. We will have, in order, Joseph Essandoh-Yeddu from the Energy Commission of Ghana, Tony Surridge from the South African National Energy Development Institute in South Africa, Mike Monea from the International CCS Knowledge Centre in Saskatchewan, Canada, Ton Wildenborg from the CO2 GeoNet in Europe, Katherine Romanak from the Bureau of Economic Geology at the University of Texas in USA, and actually an apology here at the end, Felicia Mogo from the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency was unable to attend at short notice, but she has sent us a video that my colleague Katherine Romanak will introduce. So she'll present by video to us. We'll take a question at the end of each talk, a question for clarification, and then we've allowed time for more general questions and discussion at the end. And I really encourage you to give us some questions. It gives us feedback, it makes it more rewarding for us. So please think and be ready with your questions. So with that, I will now invite Joseph to come up and talk to us about economic development opportunities for CCS in Africa. Yeah. Thank you very much, Joseph.
Thank you very much. Is it ready? Okay, nice. All right. Yeah, thank you very much. Once again, I'm Joseph from Ghana, working in the Energy Commission, and then this is one of my areas of specialization. Now let's look at Africa. The African current population is about 1.2 billion, and then by 2050, the population will double. Now, even now, out of the 1.2 billion, 80% in sub-Saharan Africa, and about 60 to 70% of the population are really in rural areas. Rural areas, largely agriculture, that's the kind of job that we do. It's still the least developed continent, really. And then, by then 2050, the population will double. And then 50 to 60% will now move to urban centers. Now it's clear, for all things being equal, energy growth is related to, GDP or economic growth is related to energy use. Simply remember those in your high school days or college days, you say what? Energy is simply, work is, energy's ability to do work. Yeah. So with that energy, then you have less energy, work to do. And for that matter, no wonder that when you talk about Africa, we are the least developed. Yes. Now, it's true also that Tim mentioned energy, most of the CO2 emissions come from the energy sector. But not energy sector, but Africa is the least CO2 emitter. If you look at it very well, if you look at the countries that are really developed, it's largely high, I'm talking about countries with high per capita income of energy usage or consumption, and they are largely in Europe. Most of the countries in Africa, look at Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Senegal, are very low. And relatively too, we have low CO2 emissions. And the question is why? It comes also when it comes to electricity access or energy access. It's also the same story. Why we have most of the countries, I would say almost all the countries in Europe having 100% of electricity access. Not so in African countries. African, only few, you can count them. Like Ghana, we're talking about something around 80% now. South Africa, yes, you're talking about around over 90%. And those North African countries, Morocco, where you're talking about something over 90%. Most African countries, below 50% of electric coverage. Yeah. But then let's look at the economic statistics. If you look for the past 5 years or the midterm, we've seen that most of the growth in most of the developed countries are really stalled. But at least, but Africa is second to Asia, East Asia, when it comes to economic growth. We're talking about something between 5 to 8% growth. And so that at least gives some hope to Africa that that's going to be the next revolution of economic growth. So that's the hope we have. But then, most of the growth will usually occur in the industrial sector. Industries, you're talking about base material production, aluminum, iron, and all those guys. But then if you come to Africa, it's still the least developed, the least industrialized, because we are not using these resources. You go to Nigeria, you have all these resources, iron over there. Come to Ghana, you also have iron ore, cement, and all this. And then, but interestingly, you want to grow, these sectors also require some level of energy penetration, particularly electricity. And then also this dependent upon the cost or the rate of electricity, how much it pays. If you're talking about the base industry, that's production or processing of iron, aluminum, you can use something about 5 cents per unit. Of course, all depends on the volumes. But largely it's within 2 to 6 cents per unit. And agriculture, we're talking about something between 4 to 9 cents per unit. Commercial sector, yes, can move up. And the homes and residential area, where usually it's entertainment or for comfort, we're talking about now to 12 cents per unit. If it's base load, then where do you get the base load from? Base load generation. If it's intermediate to stable load, if you want more, mind you, it's not only just base load, but also fairly stable. You don't want intermittent power to run industry. You want to talk about industry, even commerce. Otherwise, you are running your whole production line and the thing stop and everything gets spoiled. That's very important. But then if you look at it very well, those energy sources or fuel sources that can provide those kind of energy you're talking about, the base load and also more stable, for now, we're talking about large hydro resources if you have it. Otherwise, the traditional coal, then if you are lucky to have gas, that's also another area that we can get the base load, right? But for now, new other sources are coming. We're talking about solar, but unfortunately, those are intermittent for now for industry. Of course, you require some storage, but still, industry really requires something base load and very low electricity rates. And where that's we're talking about, thinking of clean coal, if you want to move from coal, traditional coal, which is more very highly polluting. If you have large hydro, that is fine. Now, if you look at the continent, it's rich in energy resources. We have fossil fuel all out, oil largely in the Western Africa, and then and also the Northern Africa. Then we have also oil in the East Africa now, and not only also gas, particularly in Mozambique and Tanzania. Of course, we have also Nigeria there, and then coal, a lot of coal, not only in South Africa, but also in Nigeria, particularly Western Africa, is there in the middle part of the country, or in the continent, Nigeria and then Benin areas. We also have solar, we have wind, and then hydro. But then take into consideration the electricity production rates we're talking about. Now, when we talk about CO2 emissions, we are not only talking about power sector. If you want to industrialize, you want to do oil refining, aluminum smelting, iron and steel, cement production, you're all going to have challenges with CO2 production. Commerce, even lighting, if you are going to use diesel. Lighting, preservation, transport sector is also key. Road, rail, and all those. If you are going to use, still using the diesel, and then you can't run away from greenhouse gas emissions. Even homes. Cooking, if you are cooking in Africa, if you are using gas for cooking and also biomass for cooking, then you're still going to generate greenhouse gas emissions, and largely carbon dioxide. And then besides the industry, also the natural one, the peat and wetland soils. Chocolate production, that's also very common in Africa. Then unfortunately, the negative side, the deforestation, land use, and land use change. If you destroy more, as we destroy more forest areas for real estate development, also we are reducing the carbon sink. And for that matter, you have greenhouse gas emissions. There's agriculture, rice plantation. We love rice. I love rice a lot. You cannot say because of CO2, I should stop eating my rice. And that's the issue that the Asians, I'm going to put for some time back. Fertilizer applications, you're going to have commercial agriculture. You cannot run away from fertilizer applications. Also, and for that matter, you're going to have greenhouse gas emissions. Livestock, cattle. So besides industry, food that we eat also is associated with the evil carbon dioxide emissions. You cannot run away from it. So, Africa rich in energy resources, but poor in energy supply. Should it remain so? No. If you look at it very well, the oil consumption is largely in Northern Africa, South Africa, and the rest. Then when it comes to natural gas, largely in North Africa and coal, South Africa, and then nuclear, only South Africa. The rest largely biomass. And when it comes to rural education or the public, or of course the great education, we're talking largely North Africa, like I said. Sub-Saharan Africa is largely 20, 60%. It's South Africa that's high a bit. So Africa really remains at the center of solid biomass. We're talking about charcoal and also wood for energy. It still accounts between 60 to 90% of our primary energy use. And so long as we are still with this, we're going to have the CO2 emissions. But then let's look at the opportunities. When it comes to Western Africa, we have huge pre-salt geologic formations, similar to what we have in Brazil. And so for that matter, you have Brazil now producing very huge quantities of gas. Then there are a lot of opportunities also in Western Africa. That's why all the huge investors are all coming there. And this is also the pre-salt, we're talking about depths of between 5 to 10 kilometers. So that's 10,000 meters. And that's the depth. And that kind of depth, that's where we also store CO2. We also have large hydropower, but largely it's in the southern and then Central Africa, the Congo areas. Within West Africa, we almost exhausted all the hydropower potential. And then when it comes to the carbon market, join the Kyoto market mechanism, Africa hardly benefit from anything, hardly. So we see this as opportunity for Africa. Why? Because if you really encourage CCS, then we're going to have opportunity also technology transfer. When it comes to geologic mapping and technology, that's a lot of the place in Africa is not mapped. And so this will provide the opportunity for deep storage mapping. And also the pre-salt depth we're talking about, 2 to 10 kilometers deep. Hardly. Africa, most of the mapping done is only shallow wells and that. But so the deep, you don't have any coverage. Then also it gives opportunity for supercritical fluid mechanics. And I'm very sure engineering students will be allowed to see that and all this. So, and for that matter, we help also develop material science engineering, so that the high tech will not be in the preview of the developed countries, but also the developing countries like Africa that we are coming. And then we're talking about other carbon capture technology. Mind you, it's not only for storage, but also now for industry, conventional and other activities. So a lot of opportunities exist. So that's all what I say, that the carbon capture technology is not only a preview of the big powers or the advanced countries, but opportunities also for poor and developing countries, Africa. And Africa, like I said, is the renaissance of the modern world, high population growth, and we need to industrialize. So long as we're industrial for now, we cannot run away for greenhouse gas emissions. But then there's opportunity. The fields are there, we don't even know the geographical map yet. So this gives opportunity to map our system, and also, and for that, but indirectly also, we get the technology transfer onto our content. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, thank you very much, Joseph. Any question of clarification before we move on to the next speaker? Is this microphone working? Is it working? Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you very much, Joseph. We'll move on now to Tony Surridge from South Africa. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, can I have some?
Yeah.
I'll just start off with a story. In the year 2002, a bit about and that comes because in 2002, my boss said, I want you to go to Washington for the inaugural meeting of the Carbon Sequestration Leadership Meeting. So I said, what's carbon capture and storage? And his answer was, I don't know, you'll find out when you arrive. So that's the genesis of what happened with South Africa. Why? I want to go through why, our mandate, and what we're doing. First of all, as you can see here, fossil fuels dominate South Africa's energy economy. We are now building 2 coal-fired power stations, Kusile and Medupi. They are high efficiency, they're supercritical, so we've increased efficiencies, and unfortunately they're both dry cooled because there's no water. South Africa has plenty of sunshine, but no water. Also, there are only 3 types of energy available to us: fossils, nuclear, and renewable. Fossils need to be phased out for a good reason. They're finite. So for a future of nuclear renewable, we're looking at carbon capture and storage as a clean coal technology, as a transition, as we move from fossils into the other 2. The mandate we have, there's about 4 mandates to undertake CCS in South Africa. The first was some work done by the then Department of Environmental Affairs and Tourism to look at what scenarios could we have a look at to decrease our CO2 emissions. And carbon capture and storage was one of those. Also, during the COP, what was it, 17 in Durban, South Africa published a white paper on climate change response strategy, in which there are 8 flagship programs, of which carbon capture and storage was one. The Cabinet endorsed the roadmap, and you'll see that later on, for CCS in South Africa in May 2013. And we have a National Development Plan, 2030. CCS is mentioned 3 times, or 4, in that document. So this gives us our political mandate in order to undertake CCS work in South Africa. What is the institutional capacity we have? Having a scientist working on his own somewhere doesn't work. You have to build up that capacity within the country. And what we have right now is the Department of Energy, to which my organization, the South African National Energy Development Institute, reports. And the Department of Energy has the lead government in South Africa to promote with CCS. And they're doing regulatory matters. Environmental Affairs obviously looks at the CCS work as pertains to climate change issues. We have an interdepartmental task team which tries and coordinates all the activities within the different departments. We have the South African Centre for Carbon Capture and Storage, which is a division of the South African National Energy Development Institute. And that's looking at the technical development. And then we have other institutions, for example, University of Witwatersrand, Johannesburg, Pretoria, Western Cape, the Council for Geoscience, which is a repository for all geological information in South Africa, and also the Petroleum Agency, which looks mainly at offshore, and PetroSA, which is a state gas to liquids company, is the petroleum company. When we started this process in earnest in about 2006, there were no universities active in this field at all. We had to build that up over a period of time. Our roadmap. This is our one-page roadmap. I'm not a fan of 10,000 pages of stuff. So we have 5 stages in our roadmap. One was, is there potential? When I came back from the 2002 workshop, the launch of the CSLF in Washington, I immediately instituted a study when I was working at the Department of Energy to say, is there potential in South Africa for CCS? The answer was yes. So we moved on to the next stage. And when I joined the SANEDI, we looked into producing an atlas. where could we store carbon dioxide? And we'll talk more about that later on. The third stage is a pilot storage project. We're only looking in that project at storage. It's a proof of concept for CCS in South Africa. No storage, no CCS, bottom line. The next stage is the integrated demonstration. And that now looks at capture, transport, storage, monitoring, verification. The full gambit of work that's being done within CCS. And finally, commercial operation, the rollout of commercially active CCS. I think we're just running a little bit behind. This will probably go 2019, 25, and 30. But it's coming around about the right time. Emissions. This was part of that initial study to understand where could we have CCS in South Africa. And it's important to notice that most of our emissions originate in the central part of the country. Whoops. I've gone too far. Come on, go back, go back, go back, go back, go back, go back, go back. There we are. That's it. There, I pushed the wrong button, sorry. This is where all the coal fields are located. Where in the Mpumalanga area is most of the active coal fields. Slowly being used up. We're going to start moving further up to the northern Limpopo province. That's where one of the new power stations is being built. Keep that in mind. It's important. This is the atlas that was produced in 2010, and this is a summary. You can see on the Orange Basin offshore, the Otaniqua Basin offshore, the Durban, oh, excuse my French, most of this is offshore. There are two onshore basins on the Algoa and also the Zululand Basin. These other little dots all over the place are what's called unminable coal seams. I'm a little bit reticent about putting carbon dioxide in unminable coal seams because they may not be exploitable now, but they could be exploitable in the future, and you could be endeavoring to sterilize that coal by injecting carbon dioxide. The important issue here is that is the area of most of the emissions. These are the areas of the most storage capabilities. The numbers, there are about 150 gigatons of potential storage at the theoretical level. How much do we need? If we want to store 40 million tons per year for 100 years, and that's about nearly 10% of South Africa's emissions, we only need 4 gigatons. We need 4, we have 150. It's incentive to move forward. That's one of the gates that we had to go through. But again, you'll find most of it is offshore. 98% of our potential storage is offshore. We want to look just now. We want to undertake our pilot storage project. We want to do that onshore, and those are the two possible areas up in the Zululand Basin and the Algoa Basin. We've investigated both of those as possibilities of looking at the storage project itself. The storage project, what's it for? It's to demonstrate a proof of concept for safe storage in South Africa. It's to increase our technical capacity. It's all very well to do bookwork, but if you want to do something properly, you've got to get some dirt under your fingernails to actually do something practical. We need to raise awareness of the importance of CCS, and also as a platform for the government to develop a full regulatory system. We are focusing on the Zululand Basin. Why? Because first of all, if we go onshore, it's lower cost. Secondly, it's accessible to more people. Part of it is our capacity building process, and we need to have as many people that gain access to that storage site as possible. Stakeholder engagement. We've been going about 2.5 years now. And everything ran smoothly until recently. And we had a few hiccups which we've had to resolve, which is mostly being done. But we've started up with national government, proceeded right down to the Amakosi, what are the local chiefs. South Africa, I think, may be unique that it has in Parliament, a National House of Traditional Leaders, which are brought on board. Amakosi is okay now. We need to proceed that. And sometimes the consultation halls are trees. What are we doing right now? 2 more slides to go. First of all, on the regulatory side, the activities, we're looking at the CCS regulations. They're under development. The current regulations will enable us to do the exploration program. But we need to have a look at once we start injecting, we need to have a look at other regulations in order to do that, other enabling legislation. The pilot project itself, what are we doing? We have some existing data we are now reanalyzing based on new techniques and also some newly found data we have. The idea is to try and decrease the area within the Zululand Basin in which we need to do our seismics, save cost. And once we've done that, then we put down a few boreholes, exploratory boreholes. We have initiated a surface monitoring project. It's a pilot project. It's one of the more important. I'm expecting in the long term a null result, because what that's there to look at is potential leaks. Not expecting any, but we need to make sure our protocols and our training is correct in order to detect that. And also we're looking at a stakeholder engagement and at legacy issues. Somebody comes along to says to you, I want to put a CCS over your backyard. What's your reaction going to be? Go away. Probably something more harsh, but go away is the idea. What legacy are we going to leave behind in those rural areas, those developing areas, because we want to do a pilot project there? And that's a very important issue. And one of the major requests we have is for education of the children. On the other side, what we have done is I've separated out the pilot project from what of the center's work is being done. So the center's work is carrying through, but the pilot project's been separated out as a separate cost center with dedicated people to do the job. There's one thing we've learned with the development of CCS in South Africa: you must have a dedicated person. 100%, not just enthusiastic, not just emotional, but somebody who can put 100% of their time into it. Otherwise, you go nowhere. So, Evelyn has now taken over the management so I have 2 managers, one for the South African Centre and one for the pilot project. We've taken a number of studies, and they're underway. One was the impact of the prospective carbon tax in South Africa on CCS. The major outcome of that was that if the carbon tax is put in place at its current levels, that is insufficient to drive CCS. You need something else. Looking at the continuation of the carbon capture and storage business case, it pays every so often to just look at what you're doing to make sure, is this what we should be doing? Is this good for the country? So we're reappraising the whole of the CCS program to make sure that it's what we should be investing our money in. Alternative sites. If we have problems in finding a proper storage site in the Zululand Basin, where do we go from there? And there's the number of possibilities. We could go offshore for depleted gas fields. We could do something else. The Karoo Basin, which I should have shown you on that map previously, has not been looked at because it's non-conventional. But we are praising that process through the IEA's work that they're doing, the IEA greenhouse gas. Utilization of carbon dioxide. Instead of just storing it away, incurring a cost, can we use it for something? Now, also within my section, we're doing something with the renewable energy section, looking at fossil fuel renewable hybrid systems. How can we make these two, with synergy, produce a better future? An example, why cannot you take carbon dioxide, use renewable energy to generate methane or an alcohol as part of a synthetic fuel process? It overcomes one of the major problems of renewable energies is storage. That's a possibility.
Tony.
Okay, right, I've got to finish up now. We have a bursary program, a schools program, look at international cooperation, and we're looking at the possible pilot CO2 capture plant. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. Any question of clarification for Tony? No. Okay. Thank you very much, Tony. Oh, there was one. Sorry, I didn't see your hand. Yes, the microphone will come to you. Can we have the microphone on? Okay. So
I think the question pertained to onshore. Say it again.
When you talked about offshore storage of CO2, were you thinking largely about storage in saline marine aquifers, or were you thinking about storage in depleted oil and gas fields?
Mainly the former. It's most of it is in even onshore and offshore pertains to the deep saline formations.
Aquifers.
We do have some depleted gas fields off the Mossel Bay. And that gas is 100% used to make synthetic fuels, but they're very small.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tony. And now I'd like to invite Mike Monea up from the International CCS Knowledge Centre.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tim. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you about a project we've developed in Canada called also that we've created a new center that's going to advance CCS globally. It is going to be supported by two founding companies, SaskPower, that helped and built this plant that I'll talk about, and BHP Billiton, who graciously put up money in order for us to advance CCS. Take all the findings that we have from this project and series of carbon capture and storage project, and we want to try and advance CCS so people don't have to repeat what we've done. Because we, with these projects, can help Joseph. We can help African countries that are trying to understand what CCS is all about. We can give you a platform of the struggles and the successes that we went through. This plant is built very close to the United States border. That's why it's called Boundary Dam. Boundary means close to the United States boundary. The dam is actually a cooling reservoir. First started talking about Boundary Dam around the world, they thought it was a hydro plant, but it's not. We're close to a border and we have a cooling reservoir. The plant that you see, I don't know if I can, oh, right here, that's on the right-hand side is the capture facility. And this whole operation of rebuilding a unit, a 150 megawatt unit that was going to retire in 2014, that was fired with coal, we were going to be losing that unit. So we had to make a decision. Do we try and find out if we can keep coal in our fleet, or do we get rid of coal? And with that, it meant that we had to find new energy in order to create electricity, because 50% of our power was derived from coal. So we decided to clean it up, and we rebuilt the electrical unit to a new condition, which cost roughly $600 million. And then we built this capture system, which cost $900 million Canadian. Now, a lot of people really say that's just an outrageous amount of money. But guess what? We now know the technology works, which nobody knew before this plant was built, because it is the world's first biggest commercial plant that captures CO2 from a fossil fuel. And the neat thing about this, it not only captures CO2, but it captures up to 1 million tons a year of CO2, which is significant. And what we do with the CO2 is we either take it to an oil field for enhanced oil recovery and ultimately storage, or we take it to a saline reservoir. We have a saline reservoir that's 3.2 kilometers deep, an injection well, and we have monitoring systems that are proving the safety of storage in these saline reservoirs. And we also have monitoring systems in our oil fields so that we know that it is going to be stored safely. And part of this story is working with agencies around the world in order to advance carbon capture and storage, working with research organizations that can help us figure out some of the things that we found in building this plant that'll make it cheaper and more efficient in the future. Because the next plant is not going to be $900 million. It'll be at least 30% cheaper. What we've seen in the technology will be much more efficient. But we need help to figure out what we've seen, how to fix what we've seen, and will make a difference. And people like Katherine Romanak, for example, she's an expert in storage, but also expert in monitoring systems. So we need people to help us figure out how we can advance and build these plants better. So with the knowledge center that we have, we're going to take the capture plant of Boundary Dam, and we also have a test facility that's worth roughly $80 million, and we're going to train people how to operate carbon capture and storage and how to understand carbon capture and storage. So if anybody's interested, please come and see our plant, and please come and see us in Canada, because we want to show you what we found, and that there is a solution to this greenhouse gas thing that we're all worried about. And it's not going to be Canada that's going to be the only place and the only that does this. The world has to work together. It's a global issue, and that's why we need this collaboration that I'm talking about, wanting to start. So here's what we're going to do at the Knowledge Center. We want to advance CCS globally, and we're going to build capacity. So we'll take the projects that we have, and we will link them up with other organizations around the world. And what we're finding is that it's just not regulations that are coming out from countries in order to reduce greenhouse gases or reduce emissions. Banks and lending institutions are approaching us now and saying, you know what, you need to help teach our managers that a fossil fuel like coal can still be used as a transitional fuel before we can figure out how to reduce, and before we add more renewables into our fleet. So banks are saying, we need to learn with you how you built this plant, because if somebody else wants to fund a coal plant, it's going to have to be a clean plant. So you get countries that have regulations, but now you got banks saying, we can't lend you money unless you're going to make it a clean plant. So that's what we can help with. We can show what we've done and what the future looks like for these plants. So within that, what's happened is something has changed, and I think it came from COP, where now there's a mechanism that can come through United Nations. It's a mechanism to transfer credits, and that's never been done before. And that's something that we're interested in Canada and trying out this vehicle that we have on carbon capture and storage, and seeing if we can help developing countries by using what we have and training and teaching your governments and your research organizations and your constructors on how to build these plants. But the credit system now can flow between countries, and we're pretty excited about that. And that's one of the reasons we're here, not only to talk about what we've done at Boundary Dam, but we want to try and find out how we can find a company like, or country like Joseph is talking about, to see if we can work together to see if we can solve some of these great global issues of reducing carbon capture and storage. So what we're going to do is the International Transferable Mitigation Outcome, they call them IPMOs, is something that's new. And we're pretty excited about what's going to come out of this conference, because the world has changed. And it's changed in the fact that before we designed this plant, our engineers just figured out what the best way to build this plant was. Now we have to think about what's the impact of regulations, or what's the impact of greenhouse gas, and it's a different world. But at least we've got one that's up and running and working. And you can come and see, and you can come and learn with us how that's going to work. I want to tell you how clean this plant is. If you burn a lignite coal, which is what we burn, and we have lots of renewables, we have every kind of power in Saskatchewan except nuclear. And that's kind of strange, because we have some very good uranium, but we can't really use nuclear because our grid is very old and very small. But a lignite plant generates 1,100 tons of CO2 per gigawatt hour. 1,100, just think of, forget the unit, but 1,100. Natural gas is half of that, 550, okay? So Canada put in a regulation of 420. So you got 1,100, so a coal plant, your gas plant's at 550. Government says after 2015, if you're going to build a coal plant, it's got to be 420. Boundary Dam is 120 tons, that much cleaner than natural gas and CO2. But not only is it the CO2 we take out the particulate matters, the small particles, we take out 100% of the SO2. And we reduce the nitrous oxide. So that becomes a very clean plant. And that's why China is very interested in our technology. And we don't own the technology, but we have a post-combustion system and are looking for new technologies that can improve the economics. But that's why countries like China and India are coming to Canada to learn what we've done so that they can build on our platform. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave it at that. And I hope there's countries that want to come to Canada. Maybe not this month, it's getting cold, but please come and visit us. We have a lot to show you, and we have a lot to learn from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mike. Any question or clarification? Yes, you were very quick with your hand. The microphone is on its way.
Thanks a lot. It would be great to, if you could just add two numbers, the price kilowatt hour of your fancy borderline plant with and without CCS. These two numbers we have for sure.
We have that information. We're very fortunate because we sell our CO2 into the oil industry. For these first movers, generating revenue from the sale of CO2 is very important. We're also working on utilization, but whenever you create something with CO2, it takes money and energy. But it's easier for us to store, which you don't get paid for, but you're allowed to run your plant. And secondly, we do get paid for the CO2 from EOR. We do have those numbers, and they're public. A coal plant right now is $50 a megawatt hour. And a carbon capture plant like this, when we built it and designed it in 2011, was $118 per megawatt hour.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mike. And I've now saved the questions for later on. We can continue. Did you want one question? Yes, go on then. A second question.
Thank you for your nice presentation. My question is, are you sure 100% there is no any underground leakage in this carbon storage? I'm worried if there is a leakage, maybe it will be leak to their water bodies. And I'm always worried about this carbon capture and storage your program. And you are using a huge money for storage. How do you see working on storage is better solution than other biological carbon reduction mechanism? This is my second question. How it can be international transferable mitigation technology? Please, it is not clear for me.
These are actually sort of generic questions. They're good questions, but we could take them at the end. Is that okay? We'll remember those and we won't leave those. We'll come back at the end because I think they're good general questions. But thank you for those. We'll move on now. So with great pleasure, I'd like to invite Tom Wildenborg from CO2 GeoNet to talk to us about CO2 storage pilot projects in the EU and opportunities for collaboration. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you for the introduction, Tim. Yes, in my daily life, I work for TNO, which is a research organization in the Netherlands, but indeed today I'm here doing my duties. And CO2 GeoNet is an independent, unbiased association of European research organizations working on CO2 storage. So open for collaboration and advising to other countries and institutes to help them developing their capacities on storage in particular. And you see that our association has quite a number of members. It's 26 in 19 European countries. And my talk today will be directed first to some pilots in Europe. Then I will explain a little bit on the typical lifetime of a storage project and what activities you can expect. Give an example of this, and then explain a little bit on our collaboration opportunities, and finally a conclusion. Here you see with the stars indicated, the yellow, orange, and white stars, the pilots in operation or being abandoned or in development in Europe at this moment. For the record, I also indicated in gray the demos, but that is not my part of the talk. And on the top, the well-known Sleipner and Snøhvit projects. Later on, I will give you an example of the K12B pilot, which is located, you can easily recognize it, it's located offshore in the North Sea region. But before I dive into that, I will briefly explain the storage lifetime. It is segmented in various activities connected with milestones. And the first activity is the assessment and the characterization, leading to the exploration and storage permits. Then we get into the development of the project, design and testing, the real operation period, a post-closure period where everything is being prepared for transfer of responsibility to the governmental authority. So each of these phases has typical activities, and I think for countries that are at the start of this, they will obviously be confronted with the development of the assessment and the characterization. That implies that you have to screen the area for storage opportunities, then select the site and define what if the site is suitable. That's all done on site characterization. If that has passed the storage license, then the development, the detailed engineering will start and the commissioning of the site, ending up then in the operational phase, during which a monitoring program will run to get an understanding of the site, which is very important, and also to have measures if the development is not according to the original plan. So the monitoring plays a very important role in decommissioning and transfer of responsibility. This is an example from the Dutch North Sea. This project storage pilot is in a depleted, almost depleted gas field, K12B in the Netherlands, at more than 4 kilometers depth, below a huge pile of rock salt. And the operations for CO2 storage started in 2004. And at this very moment, there is somewhat more than 100 kiloton injected, typically a pilot size project. This is really, I would like to put some more effort into and explaining this graph, and also explaining why this is important in my view. You see, this is the timeline for the K12B project I just showed you. And it is mainly in the development, it was in the development phase. before 2004, and now it's still in the operational phase, resulting in more than 100 kilotons injected, represented by the red line. Below the red bars, you see these blue arrows. Probably you cannot read what it is in, but these are the various research activities that have been deployed at K12B. But most importantly, you have to understand that this is a staged process. So it's an accumulation of many projects that led to the understanding of K12B. And that helps you also in developing a project right from scratch, because a demo is almost unaffordable for countries starting from scratch. But this type of pilot, well, we used, let's say, only a few millions of euros of investment for the compressor, actually. And the rest of the materials, the platform, the injectors, the monitoring wells were already available. That's why it was so affordable. But you see that in this way, by building up projects in time, you can come up with very sensible results. And this could act as an example also for new pilots in developing countries, in particular in Africa. So CO2 GeoNet is an association that is already around for quite some time, since 2004. In 2015, we celebrated our 10th anniversary of the Open Forum in Venice. I really would like to invite you to the next one, which is from 9 to 12 May in Venice, and where you will get all the information and the latest state of play on CCS and CO2 storage. And what we can do for you is that we can advise on activities all along the lifetime of your storage project, set up collaborative research activities, provide training on the job, and recently we also became member of CTCN, so we are really keen to see if there are opportunities to help you build the capacity in your country. So in particular, we would like to have an attention for our recently started project called ENOS, which stands for Enabling CO2 Storage Onshore. It just started in September this year and will end in August 2020. And we have quite a sizable program for international collaboration. One of the collaborators now is Sanedi with South Africa. We heard Tony just explaining about that, and we're looking forward to this collaboration. In conclusion, I think it is very important that forerunner countries which already develop CCS technology set an example and help building capacity in follower countries. If you are interested and you happen to be at the Lausanne GHGT next week, we will have a workshop on Monday, just before the start of the GHGT, and we will have a more in-depth discussion on this type of collaboration and capacity building. Here are somewhat more details on CO2 GeoNet. If you want to approach us, information on the workshop, please, you can connect also directly with me, and collaboration in the ENOS project. So thank you for your attention, and maybe there's some time for one question.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom. We're a little bit running late on time, so I think we'll save the questions for the end, Tom. But I'd like, when we get to the end, the question about leakage from the lady in the audience, if you can start with that one at the end, so we don't forget your question. I'd now like to invite up Katherine Romanak from the Bureau of Economic Geology.
Thank you, Tim.
And Katherine's going to be talking to us about, well, I'll get you a slide up.
First slide first. Can you go back? Yes, thank you, Tim. And I am Katherine Romanak from the University of Texas. And in addition to the opportunities that we've heard of through the Knowledge Center and through CO2 GeoNet, I am here to give you specific actions that you can do to get your country on the path to CCS. We've found that it can take time to develop CCS in your country. And so that we are getting countries on the path. We just have to get started. I'm just going to briefly say I'm from the Gulf Coast Carbon Center. We are within the University of Texas at Austin. We have 15 years of experience doing all types of activities within geological storage projects. We do projects. We've been engaged in 9 different projects, all the way from the small pilots that we just heard about, all the way up to some of the largest industrial scale projects there are, like at Boundary Dam. We do everything: feasibility studies, storage atlases, public outreach, everything you see there. So, so we're here, like CO2 GeoNet, we're here to help you get on the path. I'm going to say that a lot during this talk. Certainly, most of the projects that we are involved in are onshore. If you look at the sedimentary basins of the world, you see that there's quite a bit of onshore storage capacity. But when you take the oceans into consideration, we see that the storage capacity becomes huge for storing CCS. But if you look at the large scale, the 15 large scale projects that are operational around the world, you'll see that most of them are onshore. So there's a lot of offshore capacity that we are not using. So we at the Gulf Coast Carbon Center decided that we needed to try to accelerate offshore deployment of CCS. And we decided, how can we do this on a global scale? And we did this through, you've heard some of my colleagues mention the CSLF, the Carbon Sequestration Leadership Forum, and this is also an opportunity that I want to give to you. It is a government-level international initiative to facilitate the development and the deployment of CCS. Membership is free to countries, and the really great thing about the CSLF is that they have 3 groups: the technical, the policy, and the ministerial. So you get the technical aspects of CCS and you bring it all the way up into the highest levels of government in order to really get every aspect of your country involved in CCS. So the way the CSLF works, we wanted to get offshore storage going, and what you do is through the CSLF you get a task force, and that's how you get your initiatives going. So we were successful at getting a task force on offshore storage to accelerate the deployment of field tests and to bring many nations together to start to try to share our technology and our experiences. So the first mandate out of the task force was to have an international workshop on offshore geologic CO2 storage, which we did in April of 2016. It was hosted by the University of Texas at Austin, and it was in collaboration with my colleagues here, Tony and Tim from IEAGHG and South African Center for CCS. And it actually got monetary support from the CSLF and from the CTCN. We had 13, because of that support, we had 13 countries in attendance at this workshop. 7 of them were developing countries. And the aims were, again, as I said, to just facilitate us all collaborating on CCS and getting it going. We have to be able to identify our common synergies and our common gaps and start planning to move forward in a collaborative way. So one of the things that came out of the workshop is we're going to plan more workshops, and we're going to invite you to come. Come to our booth 4A, and you can get a copy of the upload on your Poken, the report that came out of that was published by the IEAGHG. And we will put you on the mailing list. Please come see me if you're interested. I will put you on the mailing list, and I will tell you about follow-on workshops and invite you. One of the really interesting things that we did at this workshop was we actually had a little pre-workshop survey to help identify the needs and the gaps of each country. It's very unofficial, it just reflects your own personal beliefs, but it's you starting to look at the questions that you're gonna have to ask yourself to start implementing CCS in your country. We're going to assess the results of the survey, and we're gonna report them, and it's gonna drive future collaborative actions. So please, again, come to me and let me send you a survey, fill it out, and be included. Include your country in the assessment, and then it will get you on the path to CCS. We just have to start on the path. Now I'm going to briefly talk about the CTCN. You've also heard that talked about by my colleagues. It's within the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and it is a mechanism that provides technical assistance on climate technologies to developing countries at their request, free of charge, up to a value of $250,000. So this is all you have to do as a country is just ask for it. It's phenomenal. If you want to learn more about the CTCN, please go to, they're having a side event. Let's see. They're having a side event. There it is. They have a booth, or see me. I'm happy to help you to understand how you can use the CTCN to get assistance to start looking at CCS in your country. Briefly, I wanted to mention, we have successfully used the CTCN to support CCS. The CTCN actually supported Ghana and Nigeria to come to our workshop. They paid for Ghana and Nigeria to come to our workshop. And it was the first ever CTCN funding for a CCS activity. And so during our workshop, because we had all these developing countries, we had a little mini workshop to try to educate these countries on the resources that they can get from the CTCN. And the outcome was Nigeria is now on the path to CCS. They have submitted. We have worked together with them to help them to submit a request to the CTCN for technical assistance, and that is now going down the pipeline. So this is real opportunity. This is real opportunity for your countries. And so I'm just going to end by saying we are inviting you, please. Opportunities are available at all levels for getting on the path to CCS. You can just start by exploring your potential. You heard Tony talk about how they explored their potential in South Africa. Do a needs assessment survey. It's quick, it's easy. It'll start to give you an idea of the types of things you'll want to start thinking about. And utilize these new funding mechanisms to build your capacity. Become involved in the CSLF. It's free to countries. And explore memberships with experienced organizations such as the Gulf Coast Carbon Center or the IEAGHG. But whatever you do, please just participate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Katherine. If it's okay, we'll take questions at the end for the sake of time, so save your questions. Thank you very much,
So
Katherine.
I'm going to introduce
and you're staying at the podium, and we'll move on.
Okay, I'll start with a
story.
story.
Yeah.
So we're going to now introduce our colleague, Felicia Mogo from Nigeria, who could not be here today, but sent a short video. Felicia had never heard of carbon capture and storage. My colleague, Tim Dixon, was at the London Convention, made an announcement about the CCS before, but she was willing, and she worked with us to get funding through the CTCN to come to our workshop. And for her to present, she did a needs assessment survey, and she presented Nigeria's national situation with offshore carbon storage. This is a woman that had never heard of CCS, and then she comes to our workshop, and she is able to discuss things like their emissions reductions goals, how they have identified important sources and sinks, existing infrastructure, potential for CO2 enhanced oil recovery, challenges and gaps, and how Nigeria can build their skills and their jobs and the steps forward. So she's got on the path really fast. So we are now going to have Felicia, we're going to see her short video, and this is Felicia.
Okay, so yes, Felicia sent her apologies, but she really wanted to contribute, so she made this video just in the last 2 days and sent it through.
Good day. I'm Dr. Mrs. Felicia Mogo. I work for Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, otherwise known as NASA, Nigeria. I head the Pollution Control Division in the Marine Environment Management Department. I'm also a member of the United Nations experts group on we call it GESEP, also known as the Group of Experts on the Scientific Aspects of Marine Environment Protection. The group advises UN on various issues of marine environment protection. I represent West and Central African region at International Maritime Organization, IMO, Expert Compliance Group on London Protocol, which has to do with prevention of dumping of waste and other matters in the marine environment, except for waste on the so-called reverse list, of which carbon dioxide stream is one of them. For this category of waste, approval and payment will need to be gotten from the designated national authority of the party before it is dumped. I am here today, anyway, to speak on carbon capture and storage, CCS, and Nigeria. Nigeria, as we all know, is very rich in crude oil reserve, and it also has a coastline of about 850 square kilometers, with water depth of maximum water depth of about 260 to 3,000 meters depth, with an exclusive economic zone of 200 nautical miles. And within this marine environment, Nigeria is so endowed with enormous resources, both fauna and flora, and also, as I mentioned earlier on, huge deposits of crude oil reserve that has formed the bedrock of the country's foreign exchange earning. In the process of exploration and probably exploitation of this crude oil in the marine environment is naturally assaulted. But the country has set in place regulations that will enable the sustainable utilization of resources in the marine environment. And then for carbon dioxide and or gases that are being that come up and fall out kind of in the process of crude oil exploration and exploitation, the country recently has what is called a flare down initiative. With this flare down initiative, operators are being advised or encouraged to re-inject this gas of the marine environment, of course. And then recently, studies on the National Economic Development study kind of shows that with carbon capture and storage, that the country will be able to, if the country should really look into carbon capture and storage, and not just gas reinjection as in general, that the country will be able to earn billions of dollars and also be able to create thousands of jobs, to give rise to thousands of job opportunities, according to the study. And the country is the issue generally of CCS is generally new in the country. I actually got introduced to it with my invitation to participate in a workshop on offshore CCS in the University of Texas May this year. I was actually invited. The invitation was kind of driven by team and Katherine, and they enabled me to get sponsorship from Center for Climate Change Technology. And the center has sponsored me, and when I came back, I had to look at what I called step-down efforts to really advertise the importance of carbon capture and storage in Nigeria. And on my return too, we applied for training sponsorship from the center again, Center for Climate Change Technology Network, and the application is receiving attention. The application was prompted by the fact that there is this knowledge gap in concerning the values of CCS and how to even apply it. And again, the full need to really get kind of full need to be associated with it. And then in the process, we got connected to the Geological Survey of Nigeria and the NNPC, who are also amongst the other regulatory agencies that have rights in regulating petroleum activities in Nigeria, like other ones like my agency, like National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency, Federal Ministry of Environment, and all. And for this proposal, actually, we had to pass it through Federal Ministry of Environment. So at the end of the day, it will be like we are going to form a team made up of relevant agencies. If you are successful with the application, and it appears will be successful from the look of it, to drive this. And that will really lead to more exposure on the values and how to the knowledge, kind of close the knowledge gap also needed to get hooked up into CCS fully in the country. So as it is, we are really very, very glad. The agency is very, very glad that we are associating with this team, the International Energy Agency, and also the Gulf Coast Carbon Center, and the other global players in this. And we really hope to use the opportunity to drive it fully well in Nigeria in no far time, actually. Thank you very much.
Okay. Felicia, for her enthusiasm in still wanting to contribute to this event. So now we've got to the end, or the time for questions, and I'd like to pick up the question first about leakage from the lady in the middle. And Ton, if you would like to lead on that.
What I understand, can you hear me? Yeah. From you that there is concern about leakage and its effect. One of your main questions. Yeah.
Yes, the woman that had the question before.
The microphone isn't there. The mic is not working.
Thank you.
Are you 100% sure there is no underground leakage in the carbon storage? This is my worry. The second one is you are using a huge money for storage, this carbon storage construction. How do you see working on storage is better solution than other biological carbon reduction mechanism? The third one is you said that this is easily international transferable technology. How can it be international transferable mitigation technology? Because it needs huge money, and how it could be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So for the first question then on the leakage, Ton, if you'd like to lead on
I'm
that.
happy to answer that one. Let's say, I would say from the start, nothing is 100% sure in life. I can tell you. There's no, even being here, there's no guarantee. Where you ever are in your bed, there's no 100%. But evidence is key. If we look at the storage sites in Europe, including the demo sites, they all perform very well. There is no sign of leakage recorded. And I think this is really the main message, the evidence. And in order to arrive at this evidence, you have to do a very thorough characterization. It depends also on the amount of information available at the start of a project. If you have an oil or gas field, there's a lot of information. If you have an aquifer there, you need a lot more information to prove that it can contain CO2. So if you develop a project, it starts with a proper characterization. And as I said, it's not 100% sure. You have to have a management system in place that implies that if there is some anomaly, a deviation from what has been planned, you have to have an early warning system. So a system that warns you that there is something going on in the reservoir before it's actually leaking. So you can intervene in time. And one of the main monitoring parameters is pressure, actually. So that has to be done in a very thorough way. And I think if you are developing this in populated areas, it is key, and we learned a lot of this in the Netherlands in particular, that you involve the public. You explain to them what's going on, and that they have a voice in how these projects should be developed. And one of the ways to do that is to have them involved in so-called participative monitoring systems, so they have an understanding of what is going on. Groundwater is a very precious commodity. So in an area with groundwater reserves that are being used, you have to be very careful, or even take the decision not to deploy storage activities. That might be the consequence. So in overall, I would say leakage cannot be controlled for 100%, but we can make it viable. I think to our human standards, we can make it viable.
Okay, thank you very much, Ton. And the second question was around whether CCS is an internationally transferable technology. Mike, would you like to say something to that?
Sure. The technology that we've demonstrated is post-combustion systems, so the technology works. We've shown that in Canada. How it works internationally, we're trying to get clarification on Article 6 here. And that's what these COPs do, and we're just trying to figure out how that mechanism can be really drawn out. But what we have in Canada is our government in Canada has a fund to help developing countries, and that's very important. So through this United Nations framework, through Article 6, it will link up our government of Canada, in our case, and we can and do have some money that can help developing countries see what we've done with our technology, or have us come over and advise on how to adapt to CCS in your particular country.
Okay, thanks. And I think for many of the examples that we do see of CCS projects around the world, they are internationally collaborative projects. That is international transfer of knowledge and technology happening in practice. And that's something we really encourage, and we see it with projects such as Boundary Dam and the other projects. So I think we've got time for a few more questions. First one, okay, 7. And then we'll come over here.
Good afternoon. My name's Liam McHugh from the World Coal Association.
So I can speak up a bit, please.
From the World Coal Association. Look, I think the talks have identified a continued role for fossil fuels and coal, which is something, as the World Coal Association supports. We can't wish away coal. We need to address the emissions from it. And the talks made clear that there's a regulatory and a technical capacity that exists in countries. So my sense is that it's an issue of funding that's going to be a challenge for deployment. How do we sort of mobilize development banks, private financiers to increase funding for deployment? And then dare I ask it, what practical steps would you like to see from the fossil fuel industry, the coal industry, to increase deployment of CCS technology? Thank you.
Okay, would anybody on the panel like to pick up that one? I mean, it's a very generic question in terms of the funding for all low carbon energy technologies all come at a cost. And as we heard from Mike, in fact, the banks are looking, they question now their investments in fossil energy projects, and they're looking at, if they do proceed with those, how to make them clean. And I think that's one of the benefits and services being provided by the International Knowledge Centre and Boundary Dam. But I think it's also, it's in the fossil industry's own interests as well, as we Paris Agreement coming to force 4 days ago. We're going to be looking at NDCs being tightened every 5 years and progressed on their emissions reductions. So I think the fossil industry and many companies in that industry are active in progressing CCS. We have great projects such as the Quest project in Canada. They're operating now, reached its millionth ton. And I think that provides us a good example of what that industry can do. I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything on that. No? Okay, we'll take a question from this side of the room.
2 questions. Okay, thank you. Mine goes to the first presenter. Thank you very much, because in Africa, most of the populations think that agriculture doesn't produce emissions. You brought it out. But we have always thought that use of organic fertilizers helps in the carbon sequestration. And I would like you to tell us, is the emission rate of methane the same with organic fertilizer and inorganic fertilizer? That is the first question. Then the other one, repairs and maintenance. In Africa, we are very receptive to technologies, but the technologies so far have issues with repairs and maintenance. And when we can't do that, then we fail. I'm Christine from Uganda. I coordinate the Forum on Climate Change of the Ugandan Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. Joseph, are you happy to take that?
Thank you very much. Yes, welcome. Thank you very much. Hello? Is it better now? Right, thank you very much. Yes, you are right. If you have the organic fertilizer, it's better than artificial one. Fine. But then the challenge is that the organic fertilizer cannot meet all. So you need a complement. And that's what we're talking about, the CCS. The maintenance culture, you are right. But mind you, on the continent, we also have huge oil and gas industries. We agree with you, as we are developing, all these kind of maintenance culture is also part of development. A child will crawl, and then at a certain point also start taking steps. At a certain point, as the child becomes a youth. No more now, the person was briskly. That is life. So as we move on, we believe we will keep improving on our maintenance culture. And I guess some situation that you see some years back is also not the same now. Things are improving. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Joseph. We are actually over time, but I'm going to say that the panel will be available outside the room for more questions. We also have the booth at number 4A, and there will be people there all the time to answer questions on CCS. I'd just like to end really with a big thank you to you all for coming and for the questions, and please grab us outside and keep on with the questions. But I'd like to thank the panelists at the end for their contributions, and especially Joseph, Tony, Tom, Mike, and Katherine, and Felicia. So can we share our appreciation to all of our panel? Thank you very much. Okay. Thanks, Terry. It was really good. It's the genuine thing. Yes. The presentations will be available on the booth 4A. And on the events link as well. Sorry, I know we were going over there. Is there another event straight away? 1 o'clock? Is there another event straight away? Okay. So I know sometimes they have back-to-back. So we could have stayed for a bit longer then. Okay.